turns at the beginning, what like I just talked about, that I thought, am I even going to be able to do this? Like, is it going to succeed? But now across all of our online businesses, we're just about to surpass that elusive £10 million mark in sales to date.
A big reason of why people start e-commerce businesses is for the lifestyle that we can gain.
Before dropshipping, I mean, my life was a fairly typical 9-to-5 routine.
It's so different from the lifestyle that we have before.
So those early days were rough. When I look back at what I didn't know and what was holding me back, I mean, there were lots of hurdles.
Now I can work from anywhere, and if I want to book a trip and go abroad.
And I think what I've noticed, the more that we grow as a company, the more leverage we have. Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked Podcast. I'm Lewis Smith, the founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording the podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. Keen to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business? My book, The Home Turf Advantage, is your blueprint for launching a profitable online store. Grab your copy at htabook.com today and let's get you started. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Today we're diving into a highly requested topic on the episode, and it's all about how success in dropshipping has reshaped our personal lives. Now, we get this question quite a lot, and it's also what we were working towards the whole time while we were building our businesses. So it's important that we touch into how it's actually changed our lives. So we've gone from financial freedom to location independence. We're going to cover it all in today's episode, Lewis. So this is a bit of a story that I feel like is a bit close to your heart, isn't it?
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, it's certainly been a complete lifestyle overhaul, to say the least. How my life has changed significantly since starting a dropshipping business. And it's not just about the money we'll cover in today's episode. It's about how this success has opened up new ways of living, new ways of thinking for both of us as well. So really excited about today's conversation.
Me too. And it's important because it's not all about the money. I mean, a big reason of why people start e-commerce businesses is for the lifestyle that we can gain. So let's dive into how that looks. But first, we'll start at the beginning so we can see how it's changed. So many of our listeners, perhaps they're just discovering what dropshipping is and why that would change your life if you start a dropshipping business. So can you explain a little bit about the concept of the dropshipping businesses that you run, why it appealed to you, especially regarding the financial and location freedom that it allows?
Yeah, of course. So we'll start with an overview of the business model for anyone that's not familiar. Dropshipping is what I think is the perfect business model really for today's day and age, because it acts as a gateway to a flexible lifestyle. And if you're anything like us, the reason that you choose the business in the first place is to enable a lifestyle. It's that concept of lifestyle design. So if you think about it with the end result in mind, it then makes it very easy to select the type of business that will afford you that or allow you that. The model of dropshipping is essentially, it's a retail fulfillment method where the store, so us as the store owner, doesn't need to actually keep the products that we sell in stock. So it's really easy for us to get products out to customers, because instead, when we sell a product on our website, so one of our retail store websites, at the point of us selling it, so the customer pays us money, we then use that money to purchase it from a third party, so from a supplier, and then have them ship it directly to the customer. It means that we then don't have to ever handle the products directly, never touch any of the products, never hold any of the stock. It means we don't have to risk money up front as well. And unlike traditional dropshipping, the way we do it is with higher priced and therefore higher profit items as well. And we do it from UK suppliers. So what that means is you can offer next day delivery to your customers if you're running ads and selling your products in the UK market. So it's a really simple business. It fits perfectly into the concept of lifestyle design. You've got very few sales, a very low number of sales, but a very high profit per sale. And ultimately, the name of the game is we've got happy customers, so we can build a good brand reputation and then eventually grow a saleable asset that one day we could even exit from. as well and sell the business. Now we just eliminate that need for upfront inventory because, compared to something like Amazon FBA as a business model or private label where you have to order in containers worth of stock or certainly bulk orders of stock at a time, risk that money. By doing it this way, we can remain cash flow positive from sale one. The very first sale, we've never parted with huge amounts of money other than a few little subscription fees here and there for Shopify or ads, things like that. We're not outlaying huge amounts of capital, and so we can scale quickly with that right strategy. Back in the day when you used to go to Blockbuster movies to rent a movie and you used to go and pick like a DVD or before then a VHS video, right, to do it. And you'd have to go there, drive there. You'd have to park in the car park and maybe pay for parking. Then you'd go in and you had to commit to the movie that you wanted to choose, right? Whereas now we turn on the TV, we've got a streaming service with thousands of movies on demand straight away. And it's like that with our Home Turf Advantage model. It's the equivalent of the new Netflix streaming style services because you don't have to commit to huge amounts of stock up front. It keeps you agile. It means you can change path if you need to. With the Home Turf Advantage model that we teach, it's kind of the best parts of e-commerce. So it's the location freedom. It's the fact that we can run the business from anywhere. It's all of the reduction of all of the downsides, like the high capital without having to buy stock, not worried about really low quality products that may never sell or might have problems. And then you have to dispose of them and pay to have them stored in an Amazon warehouse. Obviously, we're not dealing with the huge cash flow problems of having to get a loan and then go and buy tens of thousands of pounds of stock up front, or those huge overheads of having a big team or warehouse, all of that. None of that exists in this business model. So hopefully you can see how with the Home Turf Advantage model, yes, it is a business model, as you said, but it's more than that because I see it as a lifestyle enabler. Imagine if you're running your store from a beach in Bali or Thailand or Mexico, or perhaps you're just doing it from your hometown cafe, or even you're just in your home office like this. It's that freedom that it gives you without all of those overheads.
Exactly. And that's the end result that we're all looking for. And dropshipping is just a business model that enables that freedom without the headaches or the high capital expenses of other business models. And that's why we've both chosen it. And it is liberating, and it's so different from the lifestyle that we have before. So let's see that. And I think we'll understand now why you were so desperate to start a business, perhaps because of the previous lifestyle. So paint a picture for us. What did your life look like pre-dropshipping days?
Sure. Before dropshipping, my life was a fairly typical 9-to-5 routine, really. I worked in a corporate job. I'd spend time in both an office. So it was a bit of a hybrid role. So I'd be in an office for some of the time in a big corporation, and then I'd maybe travel around meetings in London. And I was actually in the medical devices and diagnostics business. So I'd be going around to different hospitals where we had our equipment in there and helping train staff on how to use it and things like that. And I'd worked really hard as I'd got onto the graduate scheme in the program, and I'd done my kind of rotations, and I'd lived all around the country. And then I was working my way up that career ladder. I was always aiming for that next promotion or that next salary increase. But ultimately, if I think back to how I was during the week at that role, whether I admitted it or not at the time, I was living for the weekend because I was waiting to get back my next piece of freedom, which only came at the weekends. And the thing that has changed since the pandemic is that at that time, I could work remotely. I could work from home. And this was pre-pandemic, right? So I think there were the world has evolved since then. And people now say, oh, but I can do my job remotely. So I have that freedom. But I remember vividly the limitations on that feeling of freedom. Because, for example, I could work remotely, but I don't think I could have just jumped on a flight that afternoon and gone to Mexico for 6 weeks and then just told my boss I'm working remotely from there. Remotely meant you can still get to London if we need you in, or go and spend the winter in Bali, for example. I think there were limitations, and it was always dictated by where I needed to be in my job as well, or how much annual leave I had left. You get a certain allowance, don't you? And it's like, how much can I take, or what would my salary be that month, and how much room did I have for spontaneity or travel? That would dictate the type of holidays I could take, the type of meals we could go out for, the type of things that we could do, my wife and myself. And really, I felt like I was just missing out on things. You'd hear of all these stories of entrepreneurs traveling the world. And I think, I guess at that point, I never really thought of myself as one of them. And some days, as I say, you could work from home, but I remember that feeling of guilt, because just because you're remote doesn't mean you're free. I remember during the day, if I was working from home and I needed to go and pop out to the shops or something, or go and get a coffee in mid-morning, I'd feel this sense of like, what if I bump into someone from work who then thinks that I'm not working? And it's like this constant, yes, you're free, right? You are technically able to work from anywhere, but you're not the boss. And there's still this element of this shadow following you around of guilt. And so I always dreamt of a life where I could just travel freely at any time and at any place and not have to worry about financial ceilings. And I remember when I first read about the dropshipping business model, I knew that there was something in it that, if done right, it could be the business model that enables that lifestyle for me.
Yeah, interesting when you paint a picture of your 9-to-5 life. It sounds so similar to mine and so many other people. And it's just that nagging sense of guilt if you do something that you want to do while you're meant to be in work hours, or you can't just choose to go on holiday for longer than a week or 2 weeks at a time if you're lucky. It's that sense of not being completely in control, which I think is what then opened your eyes to looking for business models. And so dropshipping then came to you because you were on the hunt for something different, I believe. But yeah, also living for the weekends. I think people throughout the week, it sticks with me the way I would speak to people in my office when I was working a 9-to-5 job as well. And it would be, depending on the day of the week, would be how good of a mood they're in that day, completely dependent on how close it was to the weekend. And it was being surrounded by those types of people that wasn't particularly inspiring. And also it didn't feel like I was aligned with my values when I was in a 9-to-5 job as well. And I remember there was another story that when I was in my 9-to-5 job, I was working from home. So similarly, I had a bit of freedom where I could work from home, but I decided I'd finish a bit earlier, maybe about 4 o'clock or 3:30 on a day that I was working from home, because I got all my tasks done. So I went into town and paid in a check in a bank branch, which we used to have to do. And I remember going into town and I was spotted by a co-worker that was in a van and sort of pointed at me and sort of laughed, in the way that I was just in town going around running daily errands. It wasn't malicious. It was just purely because I thought, I need to get this done. I've finished my work. I'll go and do that. But it's that lingering sense of guilt or looking over your shoulder because you don't want to be, told off by your manager or do something that you shouldn't be doing. And it was, that feeling of not being free, and that enabled me to look elsewhere. So it sounds like you had that idea of you wanted to do something else, and then the dropshipping business model and e-commerce came into your life. But no doubt when you decided to go into that business model, it will have come with your challenges. So what was that transition phase for you like, from going from a 9-to-5 job to starting your own business?
Well, initially it was tough. It was exciting. I remember that palpable excitement because I thought, I've got something here. This could be my future. But it was really frustrating because I knew that it was possible to earn a full-time income through dropshipping. I'd heard the stories, I'd seen the videos online of people making millions with e-commerce and dropshipping. But I think back then I made the mistake of always just doing a bit more research. I just need to look into it, like kind of thinking that the answer would be just around the corner in some YouTube video that perhaps I hadn't yet watched. And back then I didn't understand the value of investing in my own education and paying money to get around people who already succeeded at what I'm doing. Now I see that as a huge shortcut to success. Whenever I need to learn something new, I go straight to the source of like, who's doing this the best and who can I pay to get around that's doing it. But back then I used to kind of, I guess possibly because I just wasn't experienced in business yet. I thought I can figure this all out on my own, from piecing together YouTube video after YouTube video. I'd download a free PDF and then I'd go through that guide and then I'd listen to a podcast. And it was definitely immersion. I was immersed in it, but it was immersion in conflicting advice. That was the problem. So for example, I'd have someone who was saying on a podcast or a video, just start a single product store, a single item, find your winning hot product and then run Facebook ads to it. So I was like, okay, fine, doing that. So I'm trying that. And then there's another person who I'm listening to at the same time on a different podcast who's saying, yeah, no, you need to make a general store. You need to put lots of different products on it. And, Snapchat ads are the one, or you've got to run YouTube ads to it. Like that's the way to make it, or Google Shopping or whatever. And there were just these different models. And so some were saying, go and sign up to the dropshipping directories. You just sign up and you've got all of your products there. but you end up with terrible profit margins and just an awful experience because they're usually really low quality. Or there's others saying, no, go and find the suppliers themselves on AliExpress and buy individual items and then connect it to your Shopify store and have it shipped. And they don't talk about the 30 days it takes for the items to actually arrive with customers and how angry that makes customers. So those early days were rough. When I look back at what I didn't know and what was holding me back, I mean, there were lots of hurdles. I was spending money on ads and just getting no sales. And these were my savings, and I was just pouring it away. And I think now, if I'd have just allocated that money earlier into investing in my own development and learning the path rather than trying to learn from my own expensive mistakes, I'd have been so much better off and so much faster. But yeah, sometimes you have to learn by doing, don't you? And that was the way I did it. And I wasn't sure if I'd selected the right products as well. So that was always a worry. You're starting to upload these products and you're thinking, are they even going to sell? Are they even popular? I also had no idea whether the suppliers that I'd found were reliable, as I had no real relationship with them. I just found them listed on AliExpress. So you just drop them a direct message and they reply to you in kind of broken English, translated from Chinese, don't they? And you just think, well, is this strong foundation for a business that I want to be building? It was very difficult to cut through with my business at that point and get noticed by customers, because you imagine the experience as a customer. They'd see a really low quality ad for a rubbishy product and they just kind of scroll past it on social media. I don't think, if you think that's going to be your route to millions, it's very unlikely if you're not adding much value. So I had to rapidly upskill if I wanted to make this work, and I had to start following a proven model. And now the concept of high ticket dropshipping was actually quite popular in the US at the time, but there was hardly anyone that I could find who'd successfully adapted it from the US to make it work in the UK market. And I thought, well, I'm learning a lot of new things right now. My life has been turned upside down. I've got a new business. I've got new niches I'm looking at. I'm looking at new ad platforms. I didn't even know what an ad platform was 3 months ago. And here we are doing all this new stuff. Can we at least just keep one thing consistent? Maybe the country, just keep the taxes the same, the business setup the same, the banking, fast delivery to customers, UK opening hours. If I could just keep those bits the same, I would be happy to learn all the other bits. But if I was also doing this in a separate country, I just think it added unnecessary complications and complexity. So I paid to work with some mentors, mainly in the US market, as this is where it was already quite an established business model. And it's certainly a lot more competitive over there. But each day I was working with them, I brought these new lessons together, and slowly I started to build up my confidence of, okay, if I could piece together the equivalents in the UK to how all of this worked in the US, from the legals or the supplier contracts, or if it was the taxes, the VAT and corporation tax, dealing with HMRC, Companies House, all of the terminology that we use, what to say to UK suppliers, what they want to hear, because they're not going to want to hear the same scripts that they advise talking to in the US or other countries. And so as I started to piece that stuff together, eventually from a very rocky start and nearly going bankrupt after missing some key differences between how accounting works in the US versus how it works in the UK, I managed to claw it back. And from the point of near ruin, we did eventually build up the businesses to where they are today.
Yeah, I mean, any story of growing a business, especially when it's so different from your initial experience, is going to be covered and filled with challenges along the way. But it's always good to hear your story, Lewis, because the position you're in now, it didn't come without challenges. You weren't in a special position before you started. So it's nice to know that you've been through the same challenges that we all go through when we start new businesses, especially if it's in a complete new industry. I think just talking about that transition phase that we're going into there's also that mindset shift that we have to do. So when you're an employee, it's very much about do this, do that, be here, be there. And you're being told what to do. You're being told what's the most effective use of your time. Then when you have a business, it's up to you. You've got to decide what's the most effective use of your time. You can decide when you work, where you work from. So there is a change in mindset to suddenly have the self-discipline and also the oversight of yourself to understand where your time is best used. So that took me a bit of time to get used to. I think as we grow up through the usual traditional path in society, certainly in the UK, you're always told what to do and where to be, as you go through the schooling system and higher education, then into a job. And suddenly you have the freedom. When you have your own business, you have the freedom to decide what you do, but it also comes with a bit of time, I find, that you have to then realize what's the best use of my time for this new business. But once you've got that nailed, you can really scale much quicker than you would in a 9-to-5 job, because your income is tied to the profits of the business instead of the 2-3% increases that you'd get at a job and the occasional promotion. So it's completely different. So now let's dive into how different it has been for you, Lewis. Then you've been through that transition phase, but how does your life look now, and how has your approach to money changed since you've got your own business?
I don't see myself as there yet. I'm certainly not where I want to be. I enjoy the journey and I enjoy every day, and I'm very grateful for it, but I'm absolutely still growing every day. So I'm not standing still. I'm still very much on the journey. And it certainly didn't get to where it is overnight. There were times at the beginning, like I just talked about, that I thought, am I even going to be able to do this? Like, is it going to succeed? But now across all of our online businesses, we're just about to surpass that elusive £10 million mark in sales to date, which is incredible to think back to like 2017 when I'd not even started. And I think what I've noticed, the more that we grow as a company, the more leverage we have. For example, rather than in my old job where I was living paycheck to paycheck, now I can start to make strategic moves. Like, for example, I could hire a new team or a new team member, or I could hire an agency who are specialists in what they do to come in and optimize a certain part of the business. So, for example, it could be like, okay, we need to start running ads on a new ad platform, bring in the best people to run those ads on that ad platform, who do it for lots of other companies and are specialists in it. Saves me years of learning that craft. Same with email marketing or event management or whatever the things are. And what that does is it frees up my time and my headspace and ensures that I'm not the bottleneck to our growth as a company. So really, as you're a business owner, as you start to grow as a business owner, you just become like a conductor of capital. You're basically just allocating capital to the right thing and trying to kind of control the show as much as you can, and then just get out of the way and let the band play, And that, I think, to me, means that we can grow at a much faster rate. But on top of this, the capital that you accumulate as a business, because you probably won't be able to invest all of it. I mean, you can try, and certainly that's probably where you'll get the highest ROI of investment if you just invest it back into your own business, because obviously then it brings down your taxable profit, you're reinvesting it, and it generates more revenue and more profit for the company, and you have a direct control over that, whereas you can't necessarily control other external investments. But if you do allocate capital into more passive investments, it can start to compound, and that can become really exciting as it really starts to grow, and can make you extremely wealthy, not just rich with money, but like long-term wealth. I know early on in my journey, I read some really great books on investing that shifted my mindset on it and my understanding. There are a few books like the Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle, and then Unshakable or Money Master the Game, which is the longer version of that, by Tony Robbins, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and The Millionaire Next Door as well. That's a great book. And they gave me a really good understanding of the power of generating compound interest, but also, most importantly, the power of managing risk as well, managing that downside. So you asked about like what my change in philosophy around money and investing is. I mean, since I've followed the principles from those books, I've always followed the age-old principle as well of Warren Buffett, so one of the most successful investors of all time at Berkshire Hathaway. His rule is, the first rule of an investment is don't lose money. The second rule of an investment is don't forget the first rule. That's all the rules there are. Now, full disclaimer, this isn't, of course, financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I always look and see, well, first, is there anything I can invest back into my business for a higher return than I'd make in the market, in the stock market? And I try and invest tax efficiently into areas like pensions or ISAs, try and utilize that tax-free growth if you can, because those are hugely valuable tools that can really start to compound and pick up traction. But things like pensions as well are great because you can reduce your corporation tax as a business owner. You can invest into your own pension, reduce that profitability of the company, and therefore reduce the corporation tax that you're paying on those profits. But also it then allows those funds to grow tax-free. And at the moment, the rule is you can take out, I think, 25% of your pension tax-free when you reach a certain age, which is cool. And then obviously you can live off the rest at that point. And if the growth is more than you need to live off, you have this nest egg that just compounds and continues to provide for you. So my strategy with investing has always been diversify globally in extremely low-cost index funds. Super simple, super boring, probably very risk-averse. But I don't believe I'm clever enough to predict whether the US is going to boom or China is going to boom or whichever other country is going to boom in the future. Right? That's a full-time job trying to manage that stuff. So I don't know what the future holds, but I know that if I can diversify globally, my downside is managed. So we're not going to lose everything, hopefully, unless there's an absolute apocalypse, in which case the investments aren't going to be, the biggest concern anyway. And I have an extremely long time horizon with it as well. Historically, the S&P 500, so the basket of like 500 stocks in the US, over 1 year or 5 years has been very volatile. So if I put money into that over 1 year and expecting that it's going to be great, it might be a good year, but it also might be a horrific year and I'd lose loads of money. But over a 20 or 30 year time horizon, there's not been a negative 30-year time period for the S&P 500. Like there's not been a 30-year time frame where if you'd invested at year 1, by year 30, you wouldn't have made a significant amount of money. But if you put £50,000 into a low-cost S&P index fund with an annual fee of like 0.15%, with the average returns per year of 7.85%, which is fairly conservative, if you held that for 30 years, that 50k would be worth approximately £480,000. Now imagine doing it with 500k. Under those same conditions, you'd be at £4.628 million after 30 years. So you can see that at that point, you're into like crazy money that you just wouldn't be earning in a job, no matter how high up the ranks you go. It just gives you that more robust financial buffer, means you can afford to take those risks. The bills are covered, you're financially secure, and it means we can focus on helping other people and improving ourselves as well, not having to constantly fear and stress how to pay the next bill that's coming our way.
Yeah, fascinating how your investing advice has sort of grown, and no doubt when you moved into a limited company structure and you had your own limited company, that makes such a huge difference. And also when it comes to money as well, as I mentioned before, your own income is tied to the profits of a business. And you also can decide how you reinvest that profit to scale quicker. Now, you don't have that freedom, you don't have that leverage when you're in a 9-to-5 job. You can't hire virtual assistants to do your work for you, and you can't reinvest capital into the business in a way that will then grow the money and grow the business again. So it is fascinating to consider. I have a similar belief where low-cost index funds is ultimately the long-term wealth vehicle. But when you have a business and you understand how you can scale a business because you're running it and you have more control, I like to reinvest heavily into my own businesses because I feel like I'm going to get a much better return than 8% a year if I reinvest in the business. So you have choices to make, but you can allocate capital, which is exactly what you need to do as a founder and CEO of a business. But it is exciting because it opens up a lot more options for you, a lot more doors. And I believe it's a much faster way to wealth and income when you have control over those decisions compared to if you have to rely purely on the long-term wealth vehicle of the index funds. So no doubt with this newfound freedom over your finances and also the location independence that comes with running an e-commerce business, your lifestyle would have changed. So talk to us a little bit now about how your lifestyle has changed since having an e-commerce business up and running.
Well, the first thing is the geographical constraints that came with having a job. That was always one of my goals, to break free of those. And my online businesses have allowed me to do that. I was recently in Mexico for the UK winter for about 6 weeks. I was working from a beachside villa, had my children there, my wife Becky there, and we were all enjoying our time there. And it was all while I was still managing the businesses. In fact, we recorded some podcast episodes, I think, while I was there, didn't we? So you can see that in action. That's actually happening. And working like this in my office now, where I am, or wherever I decide to set up my laptop, the mobility, the flexibility has been life-changing. I try to not take it for granted if I can, because I remember the feeling of being expected to be at my desk by 9 a.m. and not leave until 5 p.m. And that awkward moment at 5 p.m. where you're like, oh, I've got to go and meet friends now, but no one else has got up yet from the desk and I don't want to be the first one to leave. It's that feeling of having all of my hours taken away from me by an employer. The other thing is the family impact. One of the biggest things for me is that it's enabled me to attend every significant family event so far, which was nearly impossible before due to the rigid work schedules, or even if I was outside the country for work before, I would have to miss some family events. But as my children now grow up, there's going to be things like school plays or sports days, sporting events, after school stuff, parents' evenings. Even if they're sick and they're at home for the day, I will now be there for them because of the choices I made earlier in life, which I'm proud of my former self for making that decision. That's the way to look at it.
Absolutely. I mean, they are hugely important times in your life. And I'm sure as you look back on those, you'll be so glad that you were able to get to those events without having to miss them and without having to, work or request leave for certain things. It's up to you when you want to work and when you want to take time off, which is incredibly powerful in today's day and age. And yet, similar for me, 9-to-5 job, it limits you with what you can do or where you can be. But now I can work from anywhere. And if I want to book a trip and go abroad, I can do that quickly because, because I can take time off when I choose to and go abroad. But secondly, all I need is a laptop, bring that with me, and I can continually make sure the businesses are running and scaling from wherever I am in the world. So I now like to change up from, similarly in my office here, I work mostly, but also cafes and setting up from co-working spaces or the residence lounge that we've got here. And I love that flexibility of choosing my day around when I want to work and where I want to work from. And that's completely different from the 9-to-5 job and being told where to be, which is one of the biggest impacts on my life. But also, let's dive in as well to personal relationships. How have your closest personal relationships changed since having your own business as well?
The financial and time freedom that it gives you, it just means that you can spend more time with loved ones. I'm off on a trip actually today in a couple of hours with my wife Becky for a couple of days just to unwind, because it's been a really busy spell at the moment. We got some big events coming up and I just wanted to make sure that I found that time. I blocked out that time intentionally for us to catch up and for us to enjoy the lifestyle that these businesses give us. We work hard to create these things, so we've got to make sure that we recognize that time. And sometimes it's easy to get swept up in the day-to-day and excited by the growth, but being able to provide for and eventually involve my family in the businesses has also brought us closer together. It's given us common goals, and I try and involve them in the celebration of achievements throughout the business, different milestones. And also I've been able to give back to the community, both in terms of charities, but also entrepreneurs and people that I can directly impact and help through the knowledge that I've acquired. So we can help that next generation of business owners experience the same level of financial time and location freedom as well.
Yeah, and that's why we do it all in the first place. It makes a significant impact on personal relationships, people that are close to you. For a start, you're able to give them more time because you can be at home and then you can work closely with them. And secondly, they understand the work that you are doing as well. It's a lot more easy for them to understand that I'm working really hard on this business because it's providing for our future, or because it's going to get us to this point in 12 months, 2 years time. And that's very different from working hard for a business that isn't or doesn't necessarily have the end goal that you're working towards. And it's not just for you, it's for another business. So it's been fantastic for me. I was able to move out of my parents' house, with my girlfriend, and seeing friends as well in the new city that I'm in has been fantastic since having that extra freedom. Of course, there's sacrifice and there was time put in when I first started the business, and perhaps I didn't meet friends as much. But once you've got your business set up, the freedom then comes for you to really be close to your friends again and close to your partners and parents and everything else. Okay, so for people that feel inspired and are excited to make a change to their own lives, their lifestyles, their personal relationships, by starting a business and starting in dropshipping, where would you suggest that people start?
I'd say start with educating yourself thoroughly. In fact, we did an episode 26 of the Dropship Unlocked podcast on high-ticket dropshipping. It dives deep into this, so that's definitely one to listen to, episode 26. The other thing is don't go it alone. Engage with communities, possibly join a program like ours and consider mentorship to avoid those common pitfalls. It's something I wish I had done way earlier in my journey. The other thing to mention is that success isn't overnight. It's the result of consistent effort. So try and learn from the failures you have, because there will be failures along the way, and try to pick a proven model and follow it to the letter. Don't get distracted by the noise. Remember, the journey itself is part of the reward. So try and enjoy the journey as you go. And for a step-by-step blueprint, simply pick up a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, and you can learn the exact steps I took to achieve the freedom we talked about today. That's at htabook.com.
Enjoying the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a review, and we might just feature it on an upcoming episode. Also, for detailed show notes and resources, head to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast.
If you found value from any episode of this podcast, please take just 10 seconds to leave us a quick 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It helps us more than you could imagine. And who knows, you might just hear your comments on the show. Thanks for being part of our community. Your support helps us keep delivering a new episode every week.
Now it's time to answer a question that we've had in from a listener. So thank you very much to Dwayne Alexander 9538 for leaving your question in a comment under a recent YouTube video. And if you want your question answered on the podcast, all you need to do is comment under the YouTube video version of this episode. So Dwayne has asked this question, which I'll ask to you now, Lewis. So firstly, he said, great video, Lewis. You make calling suppliers look ridiculously easy, but do you have any tips for an introvert?
Well, thank you for your question, Dwayne. I guess you're referring to the 3-part video series where I started a dropshipping business from scratch, which if you haven't seen that, we'll link part 1 of that below this episode as well, so you can watch that if you haven't seen it, where I actually call suppliers live on that video. And I think the first thing, as an introvert, the best approach is probably just to prepare thoroughly before the call. Make sure you have everything to hand, create a script, take all the key points that you want to cover and have them down on paper. And it's not about sticking to the points rigidly on a script, but it's just about having that safety net there to help keep your conversation on track, so that if they ask you something, you've got it there on hand in paper in bullet point form. If phone calls are really daunting for you, then just start the communication first via email if you have to. I'd always say phone calls are better, but just outline what you'd like to discuss and see if they'd be willing to arrange a phone call then. Just bear in mind, a lot of suppliers won't get back to you by email, so you may not achieve the same kind of results if you go that route. Remember, though, that the communication when you are on the phone with them is two-way. It's not just about you pitching to them. Focus on listening actively and ask the right open questions when suppliers speak that try and take the pressure off you from having to talk all the time, but also it gets them to kind of sell their brand to you as to why should you feature their brand on your site as a retailer. Trying to respond thoughtfully to their comments and show that you've done research ahead of time can be just as impactful as any polished sales pitch. In fact, more so. People like to talk, and if you can allow them to do so, then you're probably going to build a better rapport, which will be crucial for any business relationship.
Exactly. And just go into those calls knowing that it's a 50-50 partnership and they are getting just as good of a deal as you are. And just remember that. Remember that worth, and it won't feel so much like you're pitching or begging or desperate. You'll realize that you're actually presenting a fantastic opportunity to this supplier, and they will be waiting for calls similar to yours because they want to find out how they can increase their sales. So if you just keep that in mind, but you'll smash it, and let us know how you're getting on. So thank you, Lewis, for that answer. And we're now going to highlight a recent review that we've had for the podcast as well. So a big thank you to David Kerr for sharing your thoughts. And they expressed their thoughts under a YouTube video, again with a YouTube comment. And David said, hey there, just wanted to express my sincere gratitude for the videos you've been putting together on setting up a dropshipping business. Seriously, your step-by-step guidance has been a game changer for me. I can't thank you enough for sharing your expertise and making this journey so much easier. I've struggled with it for a long time, and I'm so thankful that I found this.
Wow, that means a lot. Thank you very much for your review, David. That's really appreciated. Very, very glad to hear that you've been enjoying the podcast and getting so much value from it. So thanks for sharing your thoughts. You see that little share button below this episode? You can share this podcast with a friend. In fact, we know that WhatsApp is the most common method of sharing these podcast episodes. So just have a think for a second. Perhaps there's one person that you know who might just be interested in running their own online business. Could you be the person that introduces them to the business model that changes the course of the rest of their life? The single biggest thing you could do would be to share this episode with them on WhatsApp. It will take you just a few seconds, and the best part is that they'll then have you to thank for their success.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you're walking away with insights and inspiration.
To kickstart your e-commerce journey, grab a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, at htabook.com. It's a distilled guide based on real experience to help you build your e-commerce venture.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more strategies and success stories. And if you like what you heard, a 5-star review would mean the world to us, and you might just get a shout out on an upcoming episode.
And finally, thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We can't wait to bring you more insights on the next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.